May I have your attention, please? Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrayl, Barzilai Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
Shalom, everyone. My name is Sonny Yisrayl, Day Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. It's a privilege and honor to present to you. It's a privilege and honor to present to you Sonny Yisrayl, Great Shire.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Please turn with me to 2 Kepha 3, 10, and 11. Second Kepha 3, 10 through 11 on page 963. It says, "But the day of Yahweh will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and righteousness?" What manner of persons should we be? Today I'm going to show you that we must be a believer, and not any believer, but a true believer. Let's define a true believer using the Yisrayl Hawkins Says program. In the 7th book of Yisrayl, part 1, chapter 16, verse 97. We're going to read the end of the verse where passage says, "Yahshua said, as was recorded by one of the apostles, a true body of believers, of faithful believers." Faithful. Do you know what a faithful believer is? It is one who practices what a teacher tells him to do. That is a true believer. Did everybody hear the importance of that? A true believer is one who practices what the teacher tells him to do. We all should know who our teacher is in these last days, right? Yisrayl Hawkins. Yahshua, our high priest, spoke about a true believer when he said, "This is the work of Yahweh, that we believe in him whom he has sent." In Yochanan 6:29. And the prophet Isaiah also told us in several places who our teacher is in the last days. Please look at Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49, 1 and 3. On page 561. It says, "Listen, O isles, countries to me. Listen, you peoples from afar. Yahweh has called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother he has made mention of my name." Skip down to verse 3. "And he said to me, you are my servant, O Yisrayl, through whom I will be glorified." So, our teacher, Yisrayl Hawkins, is the one that Yahweh said he would be glorified through. And when we act like a true believer and obey our teacher, this brings glory to Yahweh. Let's look at another characteristic of a true believer. In the 7th book of Yisrayl, part 2, chapter 14, verse 11, Pastor tells us we can make it into the kingdom by being a true believer. In verse 11 it says, But this position, if we can obtain it, and I know we can because it's open to this time period, but it is for the true believer, who will believe without seeing. And you're called into the house, so there's no reason why you can't be a part of this great kingdom. So another definition of a true believer is one who believes without seeing. So going back to the question I asked in 2 Kepha 3, verse 11. What manner of persons ought we to be? We should be a true believer. We should believe without seeing that the prophecy of nuclear burning will come to pass. So practice what our great teacher Yisrayl Hawkins tells us to do, and earnestly long for the day of Yahweh, because we know it is soon to come.
At this time, if you all remain standing, it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you son of Yisrayl, Deacon Melchizedek Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, today I would like to speak on the subject of how tests and trials are for our benefit. Now, the definition of test in Merriam-Webster's is a critical examination, observation, or evaluation. The procedure of submitting a statement to such conditions or operations as will lead to proof or disproof, or to its acceptance or rejection. And then it says an ordeal or oath required as proof of conformity with a set of beliefs, a procedure, reaction, used to identify or characterize a substance. And then it says measuring the skill, knowledge, intelligence, capabilities, or aptitudes of an individual or group, a positive result in such a test. A result or value determined by testing. All right? So let's turn over to the book of Job. Book of Job. Job chapter 16. It's found on page 420. Job 16, and let's start off with verse 7. And it says, "But now, O Yahweh, you have exhausted me. You have desolated my entire household. My woe has made me wrinkled, and it is a witness against me. My lenience rises up and testifies against me. Yahweh tears me in his wrath and hates me. He gnashes at me with his teeth." And then it says, "While my enemies fasten their piercing eyes upon me. They open their mouths to ridicule me. They slap my face in scorn. They unite together against me. Yahweh has handed me over to the unrighteous and has delivered me into the hands of the wicked." We skip down to verse 20. It says, "All my friends scorn and ridicule me, but my eye pours out tears to Yahweh. If only there was one who would plead a man with Yahweh as a man pleads for his brother." It says, "When a few more years are finished, I shall go the way of no return." So Job was going through tests and trials at that time, and he didn't know what was going on. He thought that he had done something wrong and that Yahweh had left him. But this is why in verse 22 of chapter 16 he says, "When a few more years are finished, I shall go the way of no return," because he thought that he was fixing to die. Now Job was a part of Yahweh's plan. He was a part of Yahweh's plan to prove to Satan and the original sons that he could make man in his image and likeness and give them authority, and not Satan and the original sons. And Satan was testifying against mankind and was saying that her sons were better, and mankind couldn't have the power that Yahweh wanted to give to man. And Yahweh held up Job and he said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" All right? And Satan said that he only does this for money. You know, Satan accused Yahweh of hedging Job so that no evil could touch him. And she said that this was the reason he was keeping Yahweh's laws. Satan said that Job wanted that protection that comes from Yahweh. So Yahweh said, okay, go ahead, you can test him. Just don't kill him. Put what you want on him, but don't kill him. All right. So when Job was tested, he didn't fail, but instead he endured with it, even when his friends scorned and ridiculed him, and his wife told him to curse Yahweh. He still remained strong, and this is what we should do. All right. Praise Yahweh. If we could look over to the book of Job, Job chapter 2. And it's found on page 413, Job 2. Starting off in verse 9, it says, it's found on page 413, it says, Then his wife said to him, Do you still maintain your integrity? Curse Yahweh and die. But he said to her, You talk like a Nabal, a female fool void of understanding. Shall we accept success from Yahweh and not accept trouble? So with all of this, he still didn't sin with his mouth. Alright, so we are on trial right now, and like in Corinthians, it says, Yahweh will not put us through something that we cannot bear. That he will make a way of escape that we may be able to bear it. Alright, now that's a promise to us. And also in Matithia, it says that those who cannot stand under the pressure of the tests and trials, they have no root. Alright? So your tests may not be easy, but it is up to you to withstand your test and to prove to Yahweh that you can and not fall away. Alright? Praise Yahweh. So remember that that trials come to test those who are training for the kingdom of Yahweh. Alright? And in Timothy, it tells us that all who live righteously, they will suffer persecution. Alright, so in the third book of Yisrayl, chapter 28, and verse 14 through 15, it says, The fear that they will put in you can be a temptation too. Yahshua even made the statement, Please don't worry about losing your life. They might be able to take your life, but they can't take what you've stored up in heaven. Alright? Or your judgment that you've gone through with your tests and trials you've gone through. Your overcoming is all in the books. Okay, so you're going to have a place in the work if you stick with Yahweh and his laws. And if you let yourself be deceived into following this, or if you turn to fear and run, you won't have that place. So Yahshua warned his disciples of this, but when the tests came, they gave in. It says, I'm warning you now, it's going to be rough. It's going to be scary. Unless you look to Yahweh and keep your mind on the goal and what he called you to do. Don't give in to threats, bribes, or kinfolks, especially kinfolks. They're horrible to put up with this time of the year. Alright, so if we could look over to the book of Jacob, found on page 956, Jacob 5 and verse 11. It says, Behold, we regard as blessed those who endure. You have heard of the patience of Job, his perseverance, and have seen the ultimate result of Yahweh, that Yahweh is very compassionate and merciful. Alright? So, in conclusion, I would like to say that, remember Job, before he went through his test, after he went through his test, Yahweh had gave him twice as much as he had before. So in conclusion, I would like to say that if we stand our test and we don't give up, and if we don't chicken out, then just think of the wonderful blessings that Yahweh is wanting to give us. Praise Yahweh. If we remain strong in the house of Yahweh, and if we pass our tests. Okay, so just remember that no eye has seen and no ear has heard what Yahweh has in store for those who truly love him. And with that, if everyone will please stand, I'll turn it over to the great Khan Benjamin Krause.
Shabbat Shalom. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. All right, we're going to pick right up where we left off at the feast. But before I get started, I got a phone call this morning from the greatest teacher in the world, and I'm going to tell you, it was right on time. I'll show you why. He talked about, he got a message from somebody today about today's date in the gematria. And today, of course, is 1029, okay? So he told me to type in 1029, which is 1029. And these are the numbers that came up. I'm not going to go over all of them, but 2227 and 1710 is the ones I'll look at. And 2227 means to produce alive, to cause to live, by spiritual power to arouse and invigorate, to restore to life, to give increase of life, of the Spirit, quickening as respects the Spirit, endued with new and greater powers of life, of seeds quickened to life, like germinating, springing up, and growing. And I also want you to remember the sermons last year about the 153 fish in no other place but Yachanan 21:6, about the net, okay? And it brought to mind this here, pastor is born or conceived in 1933, and you remember, and it means to breathe, to come into existence, means to become, exist. And it's from 1934. Remember now, he was conceived in 33 in his mother's womb, born in 1934. And 1934 means to exist, become, like behold, like Zechariah 6:12. In fact, that's the same word that's used in Zechariah 6:12 of beholding the branch, the man whose name's the branch. And also, I noticed this morning, and I hadn't noticed it before, but I think this is interesting. It means cleave. Cleave. Well, when you cleave something, you cut it and divide it. Just like the state of Oklahoma looks like a meat cleaver. In fact, it's called the meat cleaver state. I'm not going to get into that today, but that's a whole couple sermons right there of the signs that Yahweh's given us in this time period. Also reminded me of, the Freemasons I told you a few years ago are the ones that invented baseball. In fact, Abner Doubleday. This year in the World Series, you have the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians. Well, why would that be? Remember the year 2016 and 666? Here you go. Chicago, Illinois, 60606 zip code. And the area code of Cleveland, 216. Are you getting the picture? The divided land in 2016. In 2016, remember, it means to turn, to reverse, contrary. From 2015, reversed. It means to turn about or over, to change, to overturn, overthrow. And it also means to become. Just like 1933, 1934. You see how it all ties in so beautifully? 2016 and 1934, how they're showing us something here. Now also, though, 1710 was the other number, and it meant, and Pastor, I didn't go over with him everything I was going to talk about today, but we did talk about this, and it means fish. And this is the very word used in last year's sermon about the 153 fish. It's from 1709, and it means fish, or collection of fish, from 1711, and it means to move rapidly, to become numerous, and to grow. Multiply and increase. And you remember I told you the net, the gematria in Greek letters of the net is 1224, which is 612 times 2, okay, or 153 times 8. Go back and listen to those sermons because you're going to see how it ties in with this showdown in these last days and what's fixing to take place that the plotters are planning. Remember, Pastor said this is a plan they're bringing about, this destruction. Now here's the word showdown in the gematria. We're going to look at one of those numbers, 2042, and it means to stir up, provoke, arouse to anger, to provoke, irritate, incite. It means stirred up, and it's from this Greek word here, eris, which means contention, strife, wrangling, a readiness to quarrel, having a contentious spirit, which the Vatican has, Pope Francis, an affection for dispute. Remember what a showdown is. It's a contention or a debate, strife or variance. Isn't that amazing? That's in 2042. And the word showdown, and that's what's taking place. Now, is Pastor a wrangler? No, he's not. If you remember who came in the Jeep Wrangler last year in D.C.? Yeah, that's right. Pope Francis. He's the one that came in the Jeep Wrangler. I'm going to show you that here in a minute, but let's see. First, I want to show you this. Pastor just put this out last night. Yisrayl Hawkins' press release at 7:17 says Yisrayl Hawkins begs trick-or-treaters to read new article this week before even considering their Halloween costume. Okay? So take heed to this. This came out last night. And speaking of Halloween, on 10/31, while we're looking for the new moon, not the full moon with the witch flying across it, right? The Catholics and the Lutherans are preparing for a historic Reformation anniversary, and Pope Francis is going to visit the Lutheran church leaders on the 500th anniversary. It says Catholics and Lutherans are no longer defining themselves in opposition to each other. Remember the Lutherans, Martin Luther nailed the 95 thesis to the Nuremberg church, Wittenberg church, I believe, in Germany, showing the reasons why the Catholic Church was the whore of Revelation 17. Do y'all remember that? That started the Protestant movement. But see, the Protestants are no longer protesting. They're not in opposition, are they? Just like the Revelation says, the two horns. Okay, the two horns, they're both in agreement and they're in unity. And 1031, Pope Francis and the heads of the Lutheran World Federation will be jointly presiding at an ecumenical prayer service in Lund Cathedral in Sweden. Okay, on the 500th anniversary, because they say, he's not such a bad guy anymore. There it is, 500th anniversary. He's no longer an anti-Messiah anymore. Or they call them Antichrist. But I need to remind them what I told them last year about 500, how it means anti-Messiah on their 500th anniversary. See, these people are, this is snaky. Now let me tell you some other snaky stuff going on here. Speaking of serpents, the Jesuits gathered, this is from September 30th, for a worldwide meeting in Rome to select new leader. Okay? Now, the head of the Jesuits is known as the Black Pope, or the Superior General of the Jesuits. Okay? And they're also known as the Society of Jesus. Okay? Founded not by Ignatius Loyola. Now, notice this number here. It says this October, 215 Jesuits from around the world will meet in Rome for General Congregation 36, okay, to elect a new Superior General and set priorities for the Society of Jesus, the largest order of priests and brothers in the Roman Church. Okay, that's that article. Here's from the Catholic newspaper Crux. Jesuits, the church's flagship religious order, plot a new course. Remember, they're electing a new Jesuit general. They're plotting a new course. And of course, if you're plotting anything, you would need these instruments right here. If you're going to plot, you need to have this compass and the square of the Freemasons. Why don't you turn over to Psalm 2 real quick. Psalm chapter 2. Or Psalm 2. Psalm chapter 2. Sorry about that. Psalm 2. And let's look at verse 1. It's on page 435. And it says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people plot vanity or empty schemes?" Look at the side note. The conspiracies of the Gentiles. Conspiracy. Conspiracy? Oh, I thought there was no conspiracy, right? No, the mark of the beast told you. But the mark of the beast showed us there's a conspiracy, and it's our job, the House of Yahweh's job, which began in 1933, conceived in 1933 to expose this conspiracy, right? And we are doing that, and Yahweh's doing it, and Yahweh is exposing this plot, and He's showing that only one place on this earth right now, their plot. Now, also turn over to Psalm 37:12, talking about plots. Just a few pages over on page 448. Let's look at verse 12. It says, "The wicked plots against the righteous man and gnashes on him with his teeth." Okay, that's what they're doing right now. They're plotting to destroy this great house, to destroy Yisrayl Hawkins. Do you believe that? Do you believe they'll succeed? No, they won't. And the chief wrangler that was driving the Jeep Wrangler they called it the Pope Mobile. He also had the Fiat 500. Remember, 500 meant anti-Messiah. And he was also in the Jeep Wrangler. Thought I brought that article. So they're plotting here. It shows they're plotting a new course. And they're using their tools of Freemasonry to do it. Remember, the sons of Yahweh were very, very, very intelligent. And that's where they got their inspiration. Now let me show you again. Delegates to General Congregation 36 began 4 days of murmuratio. You know what murmuratio means? It means to murmur. I guess they're doing some peeping and muttering, you know. Again, preparation to elect their new leader. This is before they elected him. I'll show you who he is in a minute. Notice the 215 Jesuits. Now, when you add Pope Francis in that mix, what do you get? Yeah, that's exactly what you get. Okay? The 215 Jesuits who are attending the General Congregation 36 at the Jesuit headquarters in Rome, which is just a few feet from the Vatican, by the way, or, from there where the Pope resides, began a centuries-old practice called the murmuratio, 4 days of one-on-one conversation and information gathering. It's designed to help each other decide who should we elect. And I want to show you what that word means here. 4 days of murmuring. Murmuring. I thought the apostle said something about murmuring, didn't he? Told us not to be doing that or something, I thought. Now, I'm going to play a video for you real quick, and I want you to pay attention. Pay attention to what your attention is being drawn to in the video. The numbers, the colors. Okay, and think about the plot and the scheme that Yahweh is going to reveal here to His house in these last days. On 1024, Pope Francis came to this meeting. They've been meeting all month. They began on Feast of Trumpets on 10/2. They elected him on 10/14. I believe it was 10/14. No, 10/10 is when they began the election, which was Day of Atonement. And then on 10/24, Pope Francis came to the meeting. They've been meeting all month. He came to the meeting himself, the chief Jesuit. Remember, Pope Francis is the first Jesuit pope. Y'all remember that, right? Okay, could you please play the video? Please pay close attention.
This morning, Pope Francis graced General Congregation 36 with his presence. From a non-decrepit vehicle and with no entourage, Pope Francis emerged at the Jesuit Curia to speak first with Father General, then to the delegates and staff of GC 36. This wasn't a social call. This was the congregation, with newly elected Father General Arturo Sosa, presenting themselves before the Bishop of Rome and asking him to guide their discernment towards his vision of the Church. We are the Society of Jesus. We are your servants. We are ready to set the world on fire. We are the Society of Jesus. We are your servants. We are ready to set the world on fire. We are the Society of Jesus. We are your servants. We are ready to set the world on fire. We are the Society of Jesus. We are your servants. We are ready to set the world on fire. Send us.
Okay, so the planners, they elected this man as the 31st general. You can just think of October 31st, last day of the month. His name is Arturo, which means Arthur. Arturo Sosa Jr. Arturo means Arthur. If anybody knows anything about King Arthur, you'll remember that King Arthur was one of the Knights of the Round Table. The Round Table? Knights of the Round Table. Remember that round circle they were just in? And remember, Knights of the Round Table is 1524, and you've been hearing that number, and it means circle. It means circle, like a round table. This is where they're plotting, they're scheming to the destruction. Okay? They're the ones bringing it about. Now notice this. This meeting was on 1024, and it means short time. Short time, little space, little while. Short, small, little of time, of short time. Are you getting the picture? Notice this. The United Nations just selected as their 9th Secretary General Antonio Guterres from Portugal, also in that area of the world, South America. 9th Secretary General of the UN on October 13th. Number 9, remember? Finishing. By the way, have you seen the United Nations new logo? Well, here it is. They're putting in their climate action next month on 11/4. They got all the signatures now. They have 55% of the nations that emit 55% of the carbon have signed on, and it's going into effect on 11/4. You can read about it online. Here's the logo. UN at 71, 7117. Ring a bell? You remember the sermons last year about that number on 7-11? Go back and listen to them, because Yahweh gave this for a purpose. Now, do you remember what that meant? Well, let me show you, because it's what Yahweh's been showing us, where we're at. If I could get this thing down. It means end. End. At the end of. Corners. The corners, the extremity. We're at the end. Okay? We're at the end, and it's from 7096, and it means to cut off. It means to cut off the end of a time period or place, or the end of something. The end of a time or place or an extremity. The making of an end of something. Coincidence, House of Yahweh? Yeah, somebody said yes, thank you. And by the way, in case you're wondering about Roland Macy of Macy's, yes, he was a Freemason, just like all the merchants of New York City, the great merchants, all of them. And I intend to bring that at some point, hopefully, at some point, and show you, okay, that these plotters have been plotting this. I'm going to show you one more thing before my time's up today. I want to get this in. So, Arturo Sosa, yeah, I need to get this on the record. Remember, 1524 meant circle or age. Knights of the Round Table. You'll be hearing more about that too, because Yahweh has their plot, will expose the plot to you. And he will save and rescue his house, okay? The people in New York City don't have anything to worry about if they listen to Israel Hawkins. What I find interesting is 1224, cast the net. Remember it said the Jesuits are rowing into the deep? Go look up Yachanan 21:6 and Luke 5:4 for yourself today. Go read it about going into the deep and casting your net. And if you'll notice, order out of chaos in Latin is 249, 492. Think of 1492 in Columbus. Remember, we still haven't got to that yet, okay? And the number 82, which pastor is 82, but 24:9 or 924 is the Hebrew 24th day of the 9th moon is on 12/24 this year. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, did you know when the Santa Maria ship went down? The La Santa Maria Immaculate Concepcion of Christopher Columbus, it ran aground on Christmas, and it sunk. What did Pope Francis recently say about Christmas? Last year, he said last year was going to be the last Christmas. Well, he would know. He would know. We're ready to set the world on fire, he said. That was from that's their video. Do you believe them? Are you afraid? Praise Yahweh. Well, at this time, it's been a great honor to speak to you. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to one of Yahweh's great priests, the great Kohan Ilya Hyler Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. Of course, with what we're seeing in today's world, the one thing that we do know that the more you see what's going on in this world, only the House of Yahweh truly knows and understands why things are going the way they're going, and no one really understands what they're even reporting. That includes the reporters themselves. It starts off with a reporter on RT, and she's trying to explain to everyone on how not even most Americans understand what kind of wars we're involved in or even where we're involved in wars. And she tries her best to explain that the United States is involved in 5 different wars that most people don't know about, but we're involved in them. And it's kind of strange that she leaves out quite a few wars we're involved in herself. She kind of misses the point she's trying to make. But it's interesting when she explains it and how she explains it, because she does make a point. When America says no boots on the grounds, technically that classifies to us as American citizens that we're not in a war. But let me ask you, if your neighbor didn't step foot in your yard, but he repeatedly shot a shotgun at you, would you not say you're at some sort of war going on? You don't have to step foot on somebody's property to have a war. And if you're dropping bombs, if you're attacking with drones, that is a form of war. Also, swine flu. This is something our people need to stay away from. Don't go to the fairs. Don't go to petting zoos. Stay away from the zoo. Don't go. CDC is now saying, I want to read this to you. This was reported by CNN News, and there will be a video on it. It says, pigs at family-friendly fairs are responsible for infecting children with a type of swine flu not previously seen in humans. In August, the CDC confirmed that variant swine flu viruses in 18 people, 16 of them who were children, and they all attended this agricultural fairs in Michigan and Ohio. Now, they go on to say when a flu virus that normally circulates in pigs is found in a person, it is called a variant virus, and the largest known outbreak, of course, that occurred in 2012. Now, they did a genetic study, and their genetic investigation says that it can tell us how flu viruses are related to one another, how flu viruses are evolving, and how they can suggest a better vaccine for the virus. Now, Dr. Greg Pollard, he is the director of the Mayo Clinic Vaccine Research Group. Listen to what he says. Yisrayl Hawkins said this long before, and if CNN can handle the truth, Yisrayl Hawkins can explain this in much more detail. This is kind of sugar-coated, but this is what he says. This is Dr. Greg, it's Poland, not Pollard, Dr. Greg Poland. He says that this has occurred ever since man, fowl, and swine closely interacted with each other. It's very watered down. There's more to it than that. He goes on to say, in the past, this would never have been detected. No one would have understood that it had happened, and life would just go on. Well, anyone in the house of Yahweh knows why it's going on, and we've known for years why it's taking place. Praise Yahweh. And it says, still, Poland says, the new report serves as a reminder that people are relatively uninformed about the origins of these variant and novel viruses, and because of that, they failed to make the necessary precautions. Well, that's why we have to train to become teachers of righteousness, learning to teach what we've been taught, so we can go out and tell people why these diseases, these newly gods come up, why they're taking place. And it's still taking place to this day. The article you'll see is another warning, and the pig that actually transmitted this virus to the humans actually did die, and they're watching the humans closely, and they're telling everybody that was there to monitor themselves. Well, it's very interesting how these things spread. Also, another earthquake in Italy, too, this last week. 2 earthquakes in Italy. Pope Francis comes. He shows up to make his presence known. And, of course, there's little he can do because this is the earth crying out. And then, of course, the Italian banks. This is very interesting, and we all should be watching this and seeing what's going on here because the banking system in Italy is collapsing. But if you remember during the feast, we also showed that Italy is the only country in the European Union that is refusing to put sanctions on Russia, who no one else seems to agree with Russia. So it's very interesting how all these things are taking place, but articles are coming out saying that the Vatican may swing in and bail out the country of Italy. They have a lot of money. They have plenty of money to do it, but it'll be very interesting to see how this is going to play out. And then it goes into these wars taking place in the Middle East, and you'll even see John Kerry says, who can keep up with all the wars? They're everywhere. Everybody's fighting everybody. No one really knows what's going on here. And of course, when you can be deceptive, you can get your agenda. As Ashton Carter says, everything is going as planned. So why John Kerry seems confused about what's going on, the Secretary of Defense says everything's going as planned. So obviously something must be working out for them. But most people are calling this a recipe for disaster. In fact, this last week, this was concerning Russia. Russia has been voted off the UN Human Rights Council amid mounting allegations of being responsible for war crimes in relation to its actions in Syria. So Russia, who held 2 positions on that council, has been voted off. They no longer have a part in that council. And it says the 193-member General Assembly on Friday elected 14 members to the 47-nation council, the UN's main body charged with promoting and protecting human rights. And I must say they're doing a horrible job at it. Russia, which received 112 votes, lost its regional seat to Hungary and also to Croatia. Hungary got 114 votes, and Croatia got 114, which removed Russia from that council. So they no longer have a spot. They no longer have a say-so, which is very interesting when you see the other meetings that they had at the UN Council where Russia they hold the position of president at that council. Watch what takes place when Russia, Syria, the United States, and the director of that council literally get into it. You can see the tensions rising. Russia pretty much lets the UN know, you're coming here, you're telling lies. Why don't you use your propaganda somewhere else? What you're doing is lying. And of course, keep all this in mind. They're pushing towards charging Russia with war crimes. That's very serious. And they're wanting to push that on Russia, and Russia is fighting back. Also, the Red Cross, they're saying that to serve the people better, they need to open dialogue with ISIS and other terrorist groups. Very interesting, the Red Cross would want to do that considering where they come from. And then also, U.S., Japan, and South Korea, they have decided to join forces openly, making an open statement showing that they all are planning to come together to combat North Korea. You can see tensions arising everywhere, but everywhere you see these tensions, keep in mind, nuclear missiles have been waiting for years for someone just to make a decision. With these emotions rising, these decisions will become easier and easier and easier. If we could please go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, Italy is reeling from more earthquakes. Swine flu, could that be making a comeback? And more on the crisis in and around the great river Euphrates in the Middle East, along with the latest moves from all the major players. Well, we're going to start off our report here today with a wake-up call for the average American. Now, before 9/11, the American people were well informed and knew when we were at war. There were commercials for supporting the war efforts and for the troops that were fighting in these wars. But times have changed. In 2016, Americans don't seem to realize that we are involved in waging war in 5 different countries.
Interesting. Well, Iraq and Syria are 2 places America is waging war, and most Americans may believe we are only advising the Iraqi military. However, America is still actively bombing the region. Now, the same holds true in Syria. We are dropping thousands of bombs there, but Americans are told we don't have boots on the ground. Well, in addition to the bombing campaign, we are also dumping weapons all over the area, some of which have fallen into the wrong hands.
Well, Somalia is number 3 on the list. The New York Times recently published an article entitled, "In Somalia, U.S. Escalates a Shadow War." Now, despite the write-up, the war in Somalia is so little spoken of that most people would have a hard time locating Somalia on a map. Even fewer realize that the Obama administration has intensified this war using special operation troops, airstrikes, and private contractors.
Next on the list is Yemen. Saudi Arabia is taking most of the blame for destroying the infrastructure and people of Yemen. However, most Americans have no idea that their government is actively helping Saudi Arabia. Not only has America provided logistical support for Saudi airstrikes, which we've reported has killed numerous civilians in the past, we've reported that, but we've also recently fired cruise missiles at some of the radar installations there.
Well, last and number 5 on the list of countries the U.S. is at war with is Libya. Just recently, the U.S. military launched 30 strikes on one Libyan city in the span of just 3 days. So there we have 5 countries, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, and Libya, where America is actively waging war, and very few Americans have any idea.
Wow. So the big question is, why the hush-hush? Could it be that our leaders know our wars are not so valiant? Could it be that if Americans did realize just how much death and destruction our country is causing, they might get upset? Well, whatever the reason might be, our media is keeping it quiet. Americans might not be affected by these wars, but the rest of the world they're not so lucky. So a lot of people here in the United States oblivious to it. But it's definitely right in the face of everyone else.
They're seeing the effects.
That's right.
Well, 2 people in Michigan were diagnosed with influenza A or H3N2 virus after reporting direct contact with swine at a fair. Now, pigs at 2 separate county fairs have tested positive for the same strain of the swine flu H3N2. It is unclear how the pigs got the disease, but it is not surprising to Dr. James Averill with the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. In an interview with WILX 10 News, he said, "It's not shocking to see that it's the same subtype of H3N2. What we don't know are those 2 pigs associated with one another."
While they are looking for the cause of the illness in the pigs, the Department of Health is working to make sure it doesn't spread. 2 people in Muskegon County in Michigan have already caught the virus from pigs while attending the fair.
Linda Vale of Ingham County Health Department says they are trying to identify anyone who may potentially have the virus so they can keep it from spreading. She told the local news media, "There's just a lot of monitoring around these flus that are in animals that can occasionally get in humans, just to make sure that we don't start the progression of a human-to-human transmission." So they know they went from animals to humans. Now they don't want it to go human-to-human.
Right, and these are kind of what they call zoonotic diseases that get from the animals to the humans. Kind of makes you wonder what's in the virus that enables it to break through the barrier of the human immune system. Kind of interesting. Well, I guess we'll find out. But Dr. Averill says you can't tell just based on signs that they're exhibiting. People should have clinical signs such as influenza-like illnesses. Well, we encourage them to seek medical treatment. And as a precautionary measure, while at the fair, people are not allowed to eat in the barns and are also encouraged to wash their hands frequently.
The pig at the Ingham County Fair that was diagnosed with swine flu did die. However, veterinarians have not confirmed the exact cause of death, And for safety, that part of the exhibit was closed off.
Oh, that's got to be scary for the people who got the flu as well.
That's right, or were at the fair.
Yeah, that's true. Well, pigs aren't the only things you need to be aware of. Frightening images coming from Italy once again. Centuries-old churches crumbled as terrified residents ran into the streets while multiple earthquakes struck just after dark. At least 2 earthquakes rocked the center of the country just 12 miles from the quakes that struck or took place only about 2 months earlier. The 6.2 magnitude earthquake and its aftershocks in August were extremely devastating, killing almost 300 people and leaving 4,000 people homeless. Wow.
Well, the most recent set of quakes started with a 5.5 magnitude. Then just 2 hours later, a more powerful 6.1 magnitude aftershock. And to give you an idea of the strength of these quakes, Catan, they were reportedly felt like 60 miles away in Rome. So that's quite a distance there, and they felt them. Yes. Now, while rescue teams rushed to help families trapped by the quakes, electricity was out all over, and travel slowed as the huge boulders blocked some of the roadways, made them impassable.
I bet. Well, rescue teams were going street by street to evacuate elderly residents. However, darkness and heavy rains hindered rescue efforts. So far, reports indicate that at least 2 people are injured, while the mayor of the neighboring town called the scene apocalyptic. Yeah.
Well, the second set of earthquakes came just 3 weeks after Pope Francis paid a visit to the region. He arrived at Amatrius, the town that was hit by the 6.2 magnitude earthquake, catching many locals off guard. Now, according to the Associated Press, the pontiff wanted to keep his visit low-key, so it wasn't announced until after he had already arrived.
Now, the Pope's main goal in visiting was to console survivors and urge them to press forward. After finishing in Amatrea, the Pope went on to meet with the people of 2 more towns also struck by the quakes.
Well, Italy's infrastructure is not the only thing that is crumbling. Their banking situation is falling apart as well. Our correspondent Larry McGee has this story and a few other ones. Larry, what can you tell us about Italy's banking system?
Economic woes in Italy are beginning to make headlines due to a downturn in its banking system reportedly caused by default loans. The volume of non-performing loans said to be held by Italian banks is estimated at 360 billion euros, which is believed to be about a third of all defaulted debt at EU banks. In layman's terms, Italian lending institutions are having difficulty recovering both the money they have loaned and the usury they have attached to it. Attention is now shifting towards the leadership as people begin to question why it was exactly that no one was able to foresee this sort of a collapse, given the intention of banks to furnish loans to inexperienced entrepreneurs with the condition that they would purchase stocks in the banks. Retired bank branch manager Andrea Miserandino spoke with reporters on the matter and stated that during his time, all banks used to have a supervisory body to evaluate individuals' ability to repay loans. About 10 years ago, he said, those bodies were eliminated for no reason, but the Bank of Italy, which has the responsibility to monitor banks' conduct, did nothing about it. The retired manager says his fear is that certain big financial groups, the notorious ones, have orchestrated this all to make huge profits. Some of the immediate socio-economic consequences of the crisis has been severe cuts at 2 major banks, including the world's oldest, Monte dei Paschi, which intends to eliminate 2,500 jobs and close 500 branches. Other institutions are undergoing similar restructuring and efforts to survive. Efforts by Russia to liberate Mosul have survived so far. The intention of Moscow, in conjunction with Iraq and the U.S., is reportedly to prevent ISIS insurgents from fleeing from Mosul into Syria. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced the operation at a recent press conference, stating that for the mercenaries to move from the Iraqi city into Syria with their heavy arms would obviously worsen the situation in Syria, and Russia believes it is important not to let that happen. The comments came as the foreign minister sat amid his Iranian and Syrian counterparts. They all pledged to expand their collaboration and working to combat terrorism. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muhalim expressed suspicions of an agenda by the U.S. to relocate ISIS from Mosul to the mercenaries' de facto capital in Raqqa. The Syrian official contends that the U.S. is not combating the Syrian insurgents, but has designs, rather, to destroy Syria's infrastructure. For his part, the foreign diplomat for Iran believes that dismantling terrorism should be a global effort that will require political will and determination, something that Persia believes is currently lacking. Mr. Zarif holds that there needs to be a more decisive approach in fighting the global phenomenon of terrorism, and that the entire effort cannot be reduced to Syria alone. The Persian official called further yet for an all-out ceasefire in Syria to facilitate the distribution of humanitarian aid to civilians, and stated that only the Syrian people should decide the course for Syria, and that diplomacy is the only viable solution for the crisis. Yet another crisis appears to be manifesting in Iraq as thousands of refugees have begun fleeing the city of Mosul and surrounding areas due to government efforts to retake the city from ISIS insurgents. The operation is in its 11th day of its siege, and while Baghdad and its allies are labeling their efforts so far a success, there are conflicting reports alleging different circumstances on the ground. Certain analysts, in fact, are calling the U.S.-led coalition's offensive a disaster, and one that should have been foreseen, given the tendency towards disunity and infighting which has characterized certain coalition members, such as the Turks and the Kurds, during previous operations. The Mosul operation has seen those same and similar tensions reignited, with the head of Turkey railing at the Prime Minister of Iraq, al-Abadi, that he was not his equal, and that the Iraqi head was not at his level, and that the Prime Minister shouting in Iraq was not important to Turkey at all, and that the Prime Minister of Iraq, al-Abadi, should know his place. Despite all of this, Defense Secretary Carter says everything is proceeding as planned, while Secretary of State John Kerry recently commented at a meeting in Chicago that the Euphrates is being torn apart by multiple wars that are robbing the region of peace and preventing the overthrow of President Assad. The secretary said there are many wars taking place simultaneously, all in the same place. The Kurds versus the Kurds versus Turkey, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, Iran and Hezbollah versus Israel and the U.S., many people versus Assad, the world versus ISIS, ISIS versus Assad and civilization, Shia versus Sunni, and Persian Shia versus Arab Sunni, just to name a few. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, as you can see, it's pretty hard to keep straight.
Yeah, and with all the countries fighting against one another, it's no wonder that we have so many wars taking place all over, and there is absolutely no peace anywhere you turn. Well, NATO is deploying thousands of troops to 3 northern European countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, known as the Baltic states. These countries border Poland and Russia. The troop deployment was announced by NATO's Secretary General Hans Stoltenberg at a defense ministers' meeting of the alliance in Brussels, Belgium.
Stoltenberg explained the deployment was in response to Russia's military buildup and increased activity around NATO's borders. Stoltenberg threatened the Kremlin by saying any attack on a member of NATO would be considered an attack on all member states. However, he added the alliance remains open to dialogue with Moscow. So you mess with any one of them, you're going to have to deal with all of us.
Yeah, so they're offering their hand out, but letting them know that, you know, there's also coming with the threat if you don't want to follow. Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Well, the U.S., along with its allies, Japan and South Korea, they've agreed to work together to increase pressure on North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons among increased tensions on the Korean Peninsula. The Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Shinseki Sugiyama said, "During our meeting, the South Korean Deputy Foreign Minister and the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State and I affirmed the necessity to increase pressure on North Korea and have it give up its nuclear and missile development, in order to realize the denuclearization of the peninsula. So in effect, try to get rid of all nuclear weapons in that area.
The officials were speaking after a meeting in Tokyo. This meeting came after a statement made by the U.S. spy chief, James Clapper, said that the denuclearization of North Korea is a lost cause. Now, South Korea said that it will start talks with Japan on direct intelligence sharing on North Korea. Pyongyang carried out its 5th nuclear test in September and said it was a test that was necessary, part of their defense policy to counter U.S. threats and sanctions that have been recently imposed or put on them and so forth.
Right. Well, as the fighting continues in the city of Mosul in Iraq, the humanitarian crisis is on a rise, and international organizations like the Red Cross has stated that it would like to establish dialogue with groups like ISIL in an attempt to spare civilians amid heavy fighting in the area. Well, the U.S. Secretary of Defense has said that he's impressed with how the fighting has been going on despite the humanitarian crisis in that area of Mosul.
Ashton Carter said concerning the fighting in Iraq, I definitely am encouraged by the results of our campaign so far. It has been proceeding as planned.
Despite all the deaths,
that's right.
It's impressive and proceeding as planned. Well, that's interesting. At a UN security session, a conflict between Russian and American ambassadors was underway. They were both accusing each other with failures in Aleppo, and this has been ongoing for some time, as we've reported in the past. Stephen O'Brien, the UN Undersecretary General, said Aleppo has essentially become a kill zone. Russian ambassador to the UN, Vitaly Churkin, stated that Russia has been doing its part to alleviate the plight of Aleppo citizens, and the eastern part of the city is being held hostage by rebel groups like al-Nusra. He also mentioned how the Russians had withheld sending any fighter jets to the area while stories of chemical weapons exploding overhead the civilians were being released. He also asked that the UN representative speak the truth concerning the matter.
Well, during that same meeting, when it came time for the Syrian ambassador to speak, the U.S. envoy, Samantha Powers, decided to get up and leave the room. Earlier, she also made the claim that the citizens of Aleppo were too frightened of Russia to leave the city when given the chance, saying that Russia encouraged civilians to leave through certain corridors, but they were too terrified to entrust their safety to the people who were bombing their cities.
Right. Well, Vitaly lashed back, saying that Powers distorted Russia's stance to the point of absurdity, and then criticizing her own absurd interpretations. He also said Russia offered to work with the U.S. to guard the roads so that civilians could safely leave Aleppo and see to it that humanitarian aid was gotten into the city, but the United States refused this offer. So, he said, how can you complain about military aid and say that we don't know what to do? Well, we've told you what to do. Allow both militaries to work together. But you said no. Let Russia take care of that and expose themselves to danger and the bullets of terrorists, not us. This is not fair, he concluded.
Well, the UN humanitarian chief spoke at a briefing on Syria and said that the effects of the Russian and Syrian bombardment of Aleppo were horrific and made clear that the deadlocked council needed to take action. Now, the council was supposed to discuss the chief's comments in private, but some asked to speak in public, including Vitaly Churkin, the president of the council. Now, Churkin also said that some of the comments by the UN officials were dishonest.
Vitaly addressed Mr. O'Brien's statements by saying if we needed to be preached to, we'd go to a church. What we expect at this meeting is an objective assessment. That really hasn't happened in your case. The tone of the world's high courts, now this is the world's high courts of diplomacy, have become unusually diplomatic. Vitaly also attacked the U.S. Ambassador Samantha Powers, who also condemned Russia. And Churkin, after the meeting, said that the attacks on his country were factually wrong and outrageous. So it seems like a lot of the different nations were coming against Russia in regards to Aleppo and Syria. But Churkin was willing to stand his ground and fight back, so to speak.
There's always so much disagreement, even with, you'd think they could get the facts and be able to work something out, but they always disagree.
Yeah, so with the leaders not being able to see a solution of peace, well, it's no wonder why the citizens don't have the same thing.
Right.
Well, with sickness and disease, earthquakes, and nonstop warring among the nations, is it any wonder that we haven't already destroyed ourselves with nuclear wars? Well, the nations are on their way to total destruction with no way out on their current course. But for you who want a better life, well, the House of Yahweh is the answer. Yisrayl Hawkins and the House of Yahweh has been teaching the solution of peace for over 50 years. Now, all we need is willing students who are willing to learn and apply that solution. Well, if you're interested in changing your life and the world, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. For any emails, you can email them at info@yahweh.com. And for any international calls, you can please call the number on your screen now. And once again, we'd like to remind you about the Yisrael Says program. If you haven't already checked out this excellent Bible study program, go to www.yisraelsays.com and just find out how easy it is to get the scriptural answers that you've been looking for.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, Yisrayl Hawkins, the one who is authorized to bring forth the solution of peace. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, I would like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl Hawkins.
Hey, you're loud, but not as loud as the thief. There you go. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You drowned me out. May the peace of Yahweh be with every one of you. That is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. The prophecies are coming together just like Yahweh said, on time. Beautiful. We have our hand in this showdown. I hope you got that about the showdown. It's and the numbers seem to be falling right in place with the prophecies. We haven't found that number that I'm seeking for yet, but it's got to be within the next 2 months, looks like. Praise Yahweh. We're tops on Google again, and this time it's an article I wrote about the trick-or-treaters. Yisrayl Hawkins begs trick-or-treaters to read new article this week before even considering Halloween costumes. I was just told that they, I was given an article where they said the parents were arming themselves, going to carry guns, and they're going to go with their children. And if somebody, some of these people that they suspect is going to try to molest their children, it's either the morgue or the hospital for them. So they're ready to shoot while they're out there worshiping their gods. The showdown. It's two things. It's that we see in prophecy. is coming with the judgments, of course, of Yahweh. And when we use the word judgment, when it's used in the Holy Scriptures, it doesn't mean like Yahweh passed this judgment or sentence, and so He's going to carry this out if you don't do this. It's not that at all. His judgment is, the best way I know to explain it, His judgment is if you eat pork, you're going to get sickness in your body. That's His judgment. Now, and of course it always comes true. But that's the way the word is used throughout the Holy Scriptures. It's not a sentence He pronounces and then forces it to come to pass. He doesn't do that. He tells you in advance what is going to come. And this is what He's told the quartet. This is what He's told the Yadim, who rule from the 7 hills of Rome. The number 1 is the message of prophecy, the judgment of events that's going to take place. Yahweh gives them, He foretells them by Yahweh's prophets, of course, like in Matthew 24, Matthew 24:14. He shows that the house of Yahweh will be warning the whole world in this time period before these judgments of Yahweh are fulfilled. So we warn them in advance. That's Yahweh's doing. We warn them in advance, and we sit back and watch them come upon the world. And we pointed out, this is what Yahweh told you. Why don't you repent and turn? The number 2 is the great burning, of course, that's going to take place. It's also shown in Matithia by the Savior, Yeshua Messiah. This burning that's going to take place, and we see it coming. We have the bombs for it. The scientists say, yes, about 1 hour is all it's going to take. It's going to be swift. It's going to be lethal and swift. And they say 1 hour. That agrees with the Scriptures. Yahweh told them that in 96 AY. It's going to take only 1 hour in the time period called the last generation, or this generation, as Yeshua called it. Then I want to show you, if you'll turn over to Revelations 19, we're nearing this time right here in prophecy, talking about the great conversion here. And of course, this is going to involve our work. It's involving our work now. We're reaching millions and millions of people, billions of people. This article, this newspaper article, they called me later and told me that this is climbing by about 1,100 an hour, but it's about Halloween. People don't realize that they're worshiping the gods. They're worshiping dead rabbis. If you look up the word Lord, you'll see it comes from it was a title, an exalting title given to man, given to the rabbis. It was given to the Catholic priests before that, and the pharaohs before that, and then it was brought down to the popes now, and they're deifying the popes and making out like that they're alive and can answer prayer. And then Benedict, their own pope, says, no, I think they're all asleep up there. Well, I'm afraid you got the wrong direction, too. but they are asleep. You got that right. They'll be resurrected one of these days by us, by the House of Yahweh. The House of Yahweh says, prophesied message, listen to me, all nations, are not mere buzzwords. That's up to 152,809. So this is our job, shown by the Savior in Matthew 24:14, that proceeds from Abel, the house of Yahweh at Abel. In chapter 19 of Revelations, we see in chapter 17 and 18 now this sentence of the great whore that Yahweh has judged. This is going to be the end result of this great whore that governs multitudes, nations, and tongues, leader of the kings of the earth, brings fornication, abominations, and so forth to the nations, as Jeremiah 23:15 said, that it brings profaneness. They've brought profaneness to all the lands. And then Revelation 17 says they've brought these abominations. They've created harlots. That's the churches that follow, the religions that follow the Catholic Church. By the way, the Pope hopes to, Malachi Martin said that Vatican hopes to come out on top in this war that they have got planned. He says the United States hopes to come out on top, and so does Russia. So that means all three of them know and are planning this war. It couldn't mean anything else if they're saying they hope to come out on top. Well, of course, the Catholic Church hopes that there'll be nothing left but Catholics. Well, where's that leave the Christian daughters that they've created? Well, they have a little bit of trouble with the Christian daughters, and they're having more trouble now because more of them are leaving, and they don't want anything to do with the Catholic Church or Christianity. So there's some bits of news getting in among them that says, as Barack Obama said, that you really need to read your Bible. Some of them took him seriously and started reading their Bibles, and they found out that the Catholic Church is telling a bunch of lies. And the sermon today is supposed to be about this, because he says Pope Francis. Now, you can't blame Pope Francis. Pope Francis, he reads the letters that the Vatican City writes for him. They have writers. They do that in the United States too. They had in political races. They had somebody bought a speech for the Republicans and read it, and the next thing you know, the Democrats were reading the same speech. So it's not really the person, but it's the writer in Washington, D.C. probably. I was corrected one time when I said Washington, and one of our children wrote me a letter and said it was D.C., not Washington, but Washington, D.C. So I'm careful to add that D.C. now. I take corrections seriously. I think that came from a 5-year-old, but not sure. Maybe it was older than that. The letters that the Vatican City gives the Pope, if you notice, he reads it word for word. So it's not really the Pope saying these words. It's not really the Pope giving the warning. It's Vatican City. And Vatican City says, gives this letter to the Pope saying, legislation, it says Pope Francis, but it's Vatican City, read by Pope Francis. Legalism makes Christians stupid. So in his letter, of course, he's coming against Yahweh's laws and saying, if you read the laws and obey these laws, it makes you stupid. Yeshua, if you remember, said, those who hear my words and live by them, they are wise. And they build their house on a firm foundation. Those who do not practice my words is like a foolish man. So in actual fact, the scripture back in 26 AY called the one that read this and the one that wrote it stupid. So they're trying to take it and turn it around. Probably don't even know that the Savior said they were stupid if they didn't do what he told them to do. But that's if the Pope is listening, I'm sure he is, he's commenting. Vatican City, I know, is listening, and that's the showdown, one of the showdowns that's coming. One of them is nuclear war and who's going to come out on top. The other one is, of course, the warning that's going out to the world. We are warning a lot of people, and a lot of people are leaving the Catholic Church and Christianity. I don't know how many other religions they're leaving, but we see people this last feast that had left because of the message going out. They came to the feast. Others wanted to come but didn't get to come, but they came because of those messages. We are reaching every country that I know of. You see here the great burning now that is going to take place. This is Yahweh's judgment saying, this is what this combination of religions and their efforts to avoid my laws is going to bring them. You got Muslims and different ones that are against the Catholic Church, but it's being drug into following Cain, continual war. It's not following Yahshua, who said, turn the other cheek, don't practice revenge, don't practice revenge in your mind. This leads to the wars. Quickly put it out of your mind. If the person repents, then forgive instantly. These are the things that Yahshua taught. Pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you, but don't fight back. Why wouldn't you rather suffer the wrong? If you suffer the wrong, you're going to be judged very highly by Yahweh. The wrongdoers are going to be, their sentence looks like about 2 months of life left for them when they're going to be wiped out. That's what Malachi 4, the great prophet of Yahweh, said. Isaiah said the same thing and said the earth would be burned. That was about 700 years BY. Yes, we're in 1934, 33 generation, as was brought out by the great priest, Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins. We're in the 1933-34 generation, and we're in the last part of it right now with the nuclear bombs that was prophesied over 700 years before Yahshua. Prophesied. They tell us this here. Well, we see those bombs now. We see the showdown coming between Enoch, raised and brought up in the ends of the earth, and trained in the ends of the earth. Very poor land, suffering from drought, high winds, little rain, but high winds, and dust storms galore, but fed the word of Yahweh every night. So we have this Oki, similar to King David, who was a sheep herder, and Yahweh took him out and says, you're going to be king now. And David said, I'm not equipped for it. But anyway, what we see here is the showdown between the high and mighty, who call themselves the great and the holy, and an Okie raised in Oklahoma and trained in Oklahoma. Now, quite a comparison, but we're going to win the battle. We're going to win the race. And Yahweh shows that. And of course, the 1933, which this number led back to, as he brought out, this number today, 1029, brings out the number 1933 and also the 1934. 1933 conceived, and then 1934 he breathes. He has breath, has life. And from that time, Yahweh trained the person to bring forth this message. This is a wonderful, wonderful plan of Yahweh. It's marvelous. Well, in Revelations 17 and 18, as far as I know, we're the only ones that's ever brought this out, and we showed the 10 kings that bring this war. Those are the allies of the Vatican right now, the divining serpent. He's drawing on their strength. The only thing, their strength is going to turn against him, and there's going to be this 1 hour burning take place. Now this, of course, will usher in, usher out, and usher in. This is the change that the 1934 shows. And that number also, as he brought out, it actually shows the word behold, and they actually give the scripture of Zechariah 6:12. Behold the man whose name is the branch, who establishes the house of Yahweh. All of that shown in this date, and when you couple that with 2016, which means the end, I want you to get these. I'm going to repeat them 1,000 times if I have to. You should be marveling at what Yahweh is showing you here. The end, 2016. And you got it all in a one lump. All these prophecies, and our job, of course, is to spread the message that would stop wars. It'll stop sickness and disease and so forth. Well, here in chapter 19 now, we see after this is shut down, the silver, gold, and precious stones all thrown away, thrown in the cash register pile. I see these cash registers all lined up in a pile, thrown in a junkyard, and the silver and the gold thrown there with it. It's worthless. I see this in my mind's eye here, maybe in the back of my head. Money is a root of all evil, a root of all evil. Well, that's the money. The silver and the gold is, it's great to make things out of it, like a golden city. I could see that for sure. That's a wonderful place that we're going to, is shown in chapter 19. We're going to see that very soon. It's not something that's 1,000 years off or 100 years off. This is going to be rather quickly now that we're going to see this take place. And Yahweh keeps saying, don't fear, which means if you don't pay attention to Him, you are going to fear. That word also means angry, letting anger build up in you. It means frustration, letting the frustrations build and grow. The saying that He gave you, don't let the sun go down on your anger, that will save your life if you'll make yourself do it. If you don't make yourself do it, it won't save your life, of course. Blessed are those who do these things that I say. They're like the wise men, not like the stupid Catholics that sits on the 7 hills of Rome that writes stupid letters saying don't teach righteousness to your children. That's about as stupid as I would think a person could get, but they're leaders of the kings of the earth. It really sounds good to the world to say, oh, you're doing the right thing, go ahead and follow your sin. Well, you're going to go to heaven. You know, Jesus died for you. He died. Well, who is Jesus? Oh, he's one of them rabbis or pharaohs back there somewhere. But he's going to save you. Well, why don't he save us now? Why don't he put a stop to this war now? Well, I don't know. I think he's asleep right now. Well, chapter 19 of Revelation. And after these things, speaking of the things you saw from Revelations 1 through 6, the quartet. Remember the quartet now. They're deeply involved right now planning this war, planning to depopulate the earth. The allegiance of all the nations to Vatican City is what they're behind and pushing. Certain ones wouldn't sign it, and they're bringing war against them. The Vatican, the divining serpent, they can't work where there's a king that's following any scriptures or any holiness. So they make war against all holiness. That's what Daniel said they would do. The kings of Russia, Syria, all of these countries that won't follow the Pope, they've got a religious leader, and sometimes they don't show religion, but they allow religion, and they allow certain portions of religion, but they don't let the Catholic Church, as Malachi Martin says, come in and take money out of their country. Like China, he says China has managed to hang on to their wealth. So they won't let, he's speaking of the Vatican, who desires a portion of every country, money coming in from every country. This way she grows richer and manages to buy and produce and become stronger throughout the earth and can enforce her ways among the nations and people. Well, of course, this is failing because the nations that don't serve her are getting stronger, while the others are getting weaker. And there's more of them. They're growing. So the allies are more, and they're making a bigger threat to the Vatican. And that's the reason this scheme was brought about, to resurrect what they call the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. They call it the Holy Roman Empire. The priests who eat pork, who eat swine's flesh, as Isaiah calls them. They're following after the priest who eats swine's flesh and bring forth the abominations of the earth. Well, they're the ones that Yahweh shows in 17 and 18 will bring about the nuclear war. Then after these things, chapter 19, verse 1, after these things I heard a great voice, as the voice of many people in heaven. In heaven. And notice what they're saying there. Hallelujah, Yahweh. You know, it really bothered me when I closed the feast and didn't do that. And everyone, I think, was in shock. I won't forget it anymore. I'm going to have a big sign laid up here to remind me. And I repented of that. Hallelujah, Yahweh, salvation and glory and honor and power unto Yahweh our Father. Now this means coming from all who are left alive here, because you have your great burning take place here by the Vatican, by Vatican City, the divining serpent that intended to just destroy everyone except Catholics, but wound up destroying 4/5 of the earth's population. For true and righteous are your judgments. What he's saying now, true and righteous are your predictions. This is proven that what you prophesied, what you predicted, has taken place. The great burning just took place. So now they are in a repentant mood, the quartet, what's left of the quartet, what will be left of the United States, looking like maybe Barack Obama will still be left alive and lead a whole group of people to the house of Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. For true and righteous are your judgments. Now get this, because they're true, but they were also righteous judgments. If you see the statutes and judgments of Yahweh and study them, you'll see the warnings to the nations, like the warning against eating pork, but you'll see the other warnings that carry confusion to the mind, hatred and hateful actions to your body and limbs, which bring forth hatred, wars, and fighting. The Roman Catholic Church, if you'll think back to Acts the 7th chapter, and you'll see the Apostle Shaul. He was a young Roman soldier, never been to Rome, trained by the priest in Jerusalem, Gamaliel, one of their priests, who all of those priests, Yeshua gave their background and said, none of you keep the laws of Yahweh. You were given the laws, so he showed that's the ones that come from out of Egypt. They were given the laws by Moshe. Yahweh let many of them die in 40 years before he took the others into the promised land and took from those Yeshua Messiah, who died a sinless life for the sins of us, all who will repent. Well, righteousness is your judgment. He's bringing forth righteousness because he shows that evil and wickedness of the gods is going to fail. So true and righteousness is going to survive. True and righteous are your judgments, for he has judged the great whore who corrupted the earth with her fornication. Now that's shown in Revelation 17. Come and I'll show you the sentence of the great whore that brings forth the abominations, that sits on 7 hills, that makes war with the Lamb. Well, of course, here's where you see the showdown coming. That's part of one scripture. They make war with the Lamb. Well, the Lamb is high priest over the house of Yahweh. So they're making war against his house, but he says, I will establish my house on this unity, Yahweh unity, which is the total keeping of Yahweh's laws, bringing you to perfection. And he says the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now that was Yeshua. Well, they make war with the Lamb, hoping to destroy the earth. Revelations, I think it's 16 verse 18 or something like that. Matthew 16, 18, where he says that the gates of hell will not prevail against it and against his house. And he says it's going to be on unity with Yahweh. Yahweh unity. That's what Isaiah wrote too. But the other corrupted the earth, and Yeshua said, I quoted the scripture, but I didn't get the right one. Matthew 16, 18, where he says, if heaven and earth can be destroyed. Now get this, remember it, please. Yeshua said, if heaven and earth can be destroyed by Satan and her crew, her gods, then the laws of Yahweh won't go through. The prophecies will fail. Yeshua says we're not going to fail. Now, whether or not this earth would still be destroyed, that's what they're after. And it's going to be unlivable. And that's the reason you see here, and I've hesitated to say this, but you see a crew of people, a great crew of people, lifted up here in heaven. For true and righteous, verse 2, for true and righteous are your judgments, for he has judged the great whore who corrupted the earth with her fornication. That's God worship. That word means God worship, as shown in Genesis 3, verse 5. Do this and be evil like the gods. Cain did it and started continual war. Yada, 1 verse 11 says all the world is going the way of Cain. So you got the great whore here that sits on 7 hills who has corrupted the whole earth. Now that's as plain as you can get. She's corrupted the whole earth, corrupted the earth with her God worship, following the evil like the gods, instead of following righteousness like Yahweh. And he has avenged, that word is wrong. He didn't, there's no vengeance in Yahweh at all, but the correct translation of that, for true and righteous are his judgments, for he has judged the great whore. He's told exactly what she's going to do and how it's going to come out. He told this, by the way, now, remember this, he said this back in Genesis 49. In the last days, this is how it's going to be. And in the last days, true and righteous is your prediction. He has judged the great whore who corrupted the earth with her fornication and has testified at Abel. Yes, the word Abel is there, and they've deliberately pulled it out. Has testified at Abel that judgment will be executed for the slaughter of his servants by her hands. Praise Yahweh. That is the end of the great whore. And of course, Malachi 4, he says there's coming a great burning. Malachi 4, verses 1 and 2, there's going to be a great burning. Earth will burn like an oven, he says. Revelation says 1 hour burning. But he says this, they will destroy the wicked, all who do wickedly. Now, this shows a protection here. If you could get this in your mind, he says he distinguishes here between the wicked and the righteous, and saying the wicked are going to be ashes under the feet of the righteous. They will be ashes under your feet. Remember, he said, the laws of Moshe, my servant, whom I gave to him for you. And he says, I'm going to send it again. Then Eliah, which is the strength of Yahweh, I'm going to send the strength of Yahweh again before the earth is hit with this curse. Now that's what Malachi 4 shows you. And that's all spelled out in the mark of the beast and in the Yisrayl says program. So it's not a vengeful thing that he is causing. It's a warning that is taking place right now in front of our eyes. We can see on television that the wars, as the woman says, war everywhere. the news media, is taking place in and around the great river Euphrates, which is shown just before the end here in Revelation 17 and 18. In and around the great river Euphrates, and that's where it's all taking place, in that fourth part of the earth. How would he know in 96 what would be taking place in 2016 and where it would be taking place? Well, true and righteous are your judgments or your prophecies. Verse 3, and again they said, Hallelujah, Yahweh. And her smoke rose up forever and ever. And the 24, this, I think I brought this out before, but that 24, it's the old words now that they're using here, which means score, fourscore, and so forth. And when you turn it around, if you put the 4 in front of the 20, it would be fourscore, which would be 80 elders there. Instead of 24 elders, it would be 80 elders, fourscore. 80 elders, and the four living creatures. This is the quartet now that we see bringing this war around and in the great river Euphrates, that fourth part of the earth. The quartet, yes, what is left of this quartet. Now, if you remember in the four messages, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Yochanan, there were people, I mean, it was like multitudes, Yahweh said, was actually worshiping Yeshua secretly. Now, because of the persecution, of course. The Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians with the Roman army was killing off those people as fast as they could, arresting them, hauling them to the synagogues. And you got that very testimony from the Apostle Shaul, who was one of the Roman soldiers. And he said, I went for them. I went out and got men, women, and children. And I got my permission from the priest. The Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians ran the Roman army. They owned it. Well, what they were doing was killing off people who were keeping the Sabbath according to commandment. According to commandment, not according to the traditions of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, but keeping the Sabbath according to commandment. The same thing that we're doing here. We're keeping the Sabbath according to the commandment. That's what Yeshua advertised. It's what he taught. But the quartet now, the four living creatures or active systems, fell down and worshipped Yahweh, who sat upon the throne saying, Hallelujah, Yahweh. So in this we see that the ones who are worshiping secretly and saying, you really need to read your Bibles. Of course, that's what the House of Yahweh is telling the people. You really need to read the Bible and not let these people cram these lies down your throat. They're all liars. The Christians are all liars. They're all slow bellies, meaning their stomachs are tore up with following the priest who eats pork. Now, verse 5. And a voice came out of the throne saying, Praise our Father, all of you. Well, here they're being taught now. The war, the 1 hour burning has ended. They're in another location here. And they're saying, they're being taught, as you can see, a voice comes. Well, this voice is being spoken from heaven now, as I brought out many times. That's what it means. It comes down from Yahweh to the one sent, and then from heaven then it's spoken by the one sent. And the voice came out of the throne saying, comes right from the Father Yahweh, who says, I'll take him by his hand. Fear not. And a voice came out of the throne saying, praise our Father, all of you, his servants, you who reverence him, both small and great. So you're going to have a classification of people here, of different educations, different positions in the world, that we will teach for a certain time period and gather together quickly before they die, but right after this great burning takes place. Now, I'll get into all of that in Scripture, but it's all there. But what we have here in this place is a land of teaching where we can teach quickly. It will be accepted. It won't be fought against. We'll guide and teach and cleanse these people. And, of course, at that time you will be divided, and you will be doing these things among groups, as Yahweh showed in the great priest of the Most High, Yisrayl, who was teaching at Abel in the great mountain that is promotion brought forth by Moshe at the house of Abel. That was the great mountain that nobody could find. Still haven't found it, but they're still hunting for it. Well, they're going to find it. It's here in Abelin, Texas now. It will be taken from them and moved to another land not yet in existence. That was the prophecy. That has come to pass. Your judgment has come to pass. And in the last days, by one called the branch, behold, the man called the branch. That's the number, 1029, just elaborated on before. The number 1029. And it takes you, when you put this in the gematria, and you start looking at these numbers, there's a bunch of them. And the Kohan just covered a few of them. But there's a bunch of numbers. But two of the numbers is 1933 and 1934. Now, with all this combined here, you can see this teaching and training that's going on now will still be going on after this great burning takes place. There'll be ashes under your feet, which means we're still going to be here for a while, but not very long. There's going to be a great cleansing take place, a great cleansing, and then after that cleansing, when everyone can be lifted up, that's what you see. That's what you're going to see taking place. Yahweh's judgments are true. His prophecies, every one of them is going to take place. As said in Isaiah 34:16, search out the book of Yahweh and read. These are being shepherded by Yahweh, and every one of them is being guarded to make sure that nothing interferes with those prophecies. They're all going to come to pass, and this is what's going to take place. These are not fairy tales. If you think they're fairy tales, how did that nuclear bomb get here, and how could they possibly fairy tale such a thing as a 1-hour burning for this generation? Don't be stupid, but believe what the Scripture says. And verse 6 now, I heard as it were the voice of a great multitude. and as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of mighty thunderings, saying, Hallelujah, Yahweh, for Father Yahweh Almighty finally takes the reign. You see that? Let's see, hold your place right there now and turn over to Daniel quickly, because Daniel 7, because here now Daniel is speaking of this very thing here, the very same fourth beast with the 10 horns that took on 7 more horns when they moved to the 7 hills of Rome. 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, here you see the 10 horns are 10 kings. They're 10 kings. And then you see in 24 where the 10 horns and the 10 horns out of this kingdom, this is a great kingdom put together by the 3 succeeding kingdoms, and became stronger with this 4th one, the strongest ever. They combined their strength, but they didn't have unity, as Daniel said, so they didn't last. It's not an everlasting kingdom like ours is going to be. Our kingdom, as Yeshua said, is going to be built on unity. There won't be any disagreement. We will all be in unity with Yahweh, and we will all be cleansed quickly now for this great thing that is going to take place in your life very soon. And the 10 horns out of the kingdom are 10 kings. Well, I preached a lot on that and brought you a lot of information on this right here, but now it should start to make sense. 10 kings that will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the first ones, and he will subdue 3 kings. That word there is transport. It's actually to uproot and take to another location and plant. And he will speak great words. This 4th beast will speak against Yahweh and will wear out the saints. This has taken place now over all these years. And Daniel, at this spot right here, was writing, this was 553 years before Yeshua. BY. This is 2016, which is the end that Daniel was speaking of. 2016. That's what the number means. The end. Put together with the 1029, which means 1933 to conceive, 1934 to be born, a work born, that you're sitting here because of that work being born. He will make war now, all these years, which they did. The Apostle Shaul was part of that war. And of course, Yeshua called him, met him on the road and talked to him. And he was converted. And he wrote the book of Galatians. And the Pope says anyone, and he uses these Galatians because there's some strange things, as the apostle said, that wasn't quite clear, so they use these and they say, well, the apostle hinted at it. Well, Yeshua is not hinting when he says you're stupid if you don't follow my word. You're not going to receive life unless you follow my words. I've got to get to this letter, but it'll be next week before I do. But anyway, it's a long letter given to the Pope to read to all the world. Now, the only reason they put a letter like this out is to try to refute what's taught in the House of Yahweh. But I'm telling you, brethren, it's like taking candy from a baby You know, I mean, this bunch is scriptural illiterate, the whole bunch. They need to take Barack Obama's advice and read their Bibles. Not the one they have in present now, because they've changed this so many times they don't even know what it says anyway. They need to get one of their older versions and read it. But he will cause many to fall away and think to change. Well, of course, the Savior himself said, and the Apostle Shaul said this, and I'll get to that next week, but he said, you're under a curse. Anyone who changes or brings another message besides what is brought, you're under a curse. Cursed be that group of people. So as he said in Romans, Yahweh turned them over to a reprobate mind. This is the curse that they're under. They can't even understand what the Scripture says anymore. None of them at all. And they've wrote their own, and they threw the other away. They held prisoner these writings that I told you was alive. They're alive. But Yahweh was still shepherding those. Even though they were in prison, he was still shepherding those prophecies for the time period when he would bring them forth in his house in 1987. Yeah, praise Yahweh. But he says, and they will be given into his hand until that time period. Daniel 9 shows the breakdown of this time period, and shows exactly when all these things would take place, and then shows you what this time and divided time means. Time of actions, when the action stopped, the time would stop. When the action starts again, the time would start again, then it would stop the next time, and then the time would stop. So that's what that times mean. Time, and dividing of times. Divided times. It only runs when the activity is going that is prophesied. Now, verse 26, and the judgment will sit. Now, we just read about that judgment. Was just reading about it in Revelations 19. The judgment is going to sit, and notice what? The judgment will sit, and they will take away his governments. Well, of course, that's going to take place with the great burning. They're taking away his governments. They're destroying themselves. They will take it away. Yes, the 10 kings are going to eat her flesh and burn her with fire and burn the whole earth in doing so. But there will be a protected place, as Malachi showed, and also Jeremiah showed, where Yahweh will protect his house, you, plus about 2 billion people, parts of the quartet, those who are hearing and worshiping secretly at this time. Take away his government, this fourth beast, take away their ruling power, their staff that was given to them in Genesis 49. Take away this staff from the Yadim, from Yada, to consume and to destroy their government completely. Then the kingdoms and the governments and the greatness of the kingdoms, that's what's left now, under the whole heaven, you could put left alive at this time, because this is the time period that we're reading about in Revelations 19. Right after, immediately after the burning takes place. And Yeshua said, immediately but after the Great Tribulation, that's in Matthew 24:29, immediately but after this great burning, the sun is darkened. Immediately but after this, then you will see this gathering take place that we was reading about there, but also here. where the judgment is set, then the kingdoms and the governments and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of Yahweh, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all governments will serve and obey him, Yahweh. Yahweh. Look back now quickly to, praise Yahweh, look back quickly to Revelations 19 again. Revelations 19, and this is what we're seeing here right now in verse 6, after the burning now. We'll go back to verse 5. And a voice from out of the throne saying, praise Yahweh. Now, this is showing a great teaching program that takes place. It's not just someone hollers out, hallelujah Yahweh. It's a teaching program that you see taking place here, that where those left of the quartet, as you just read, the creature plus the 80 elders, the 80 elders, the whole house of Yahweh. You know, I was so amazed, was talking yesterday about the many people here. I was so amazed that the young were so young and yet teaching, they could teach the laws of Yahweh. And and someone said, yeah, and that's boys and girls. And I said, you know, we have men and women that's been here for many, many years and stood strong through persecution and everything. I remember before we moved out here, before this building was built, the original stage was over there on this building. We changed it later as we started adding on the sections, but I remember women and men, and they talk about the great women of old, and I said, you know, we have women in the house that's been here for seems like centuries now. Judge Tana and Benya. Sometimes I hate to start this because I leave people out, but but I remember Judge Fanaya, who has been done a great work. All of these women have. And I remember when I had a office to the east of their offices, and every once in a while I would hear a scream, and I'd jump and run and see what was going on for a while till I found out what they screamed at, but it's because they was trying to learn computers. They hit the wrong button and wiped out 3 days' work. But they're still here. But they could teach. These people could teach nations. You know, they will be. They'll be put over thousands. They'll be put over hundreds, just like the men. I mean, this government stands for this whole thing. But we could cover, if you just add it up, you know, what Yahweh showed there, and then you start training others to reach further out, and these people will train quickly. Once this training program that we see here starts, the people it won't be like arguing with them and saying this and coming back with another scripture and another scripture, trying to convince them. It will be like Yahweh, Yeshua said, seek first the kingdom and its righteousness. Then Deuteronomy says, 12:5, go to the place where Yahweh chooses to place his name, and there do what the priest says. And they will do this readily then, because Satan won't be around to tempt them or deceive them. No deception will be left on earth at that time. So they'll convince really easy. They'll take their parts in the house of Yahweh really easy. And then this is what you see here then. The governments and everything is going to be turned over to the house of Yahweh. And that kingdom is an everlasting kingdom that will not be destroyed. Everlasting kingdom. And he says then in Revelations 19 again, verse 7, speaking to all this group here now, and this is the teaching still going on, as you can see here, right here, let us be glad, let us rejoice. That's what I've been saying here to this group. Now, you should be able to teach how to rejoice by now. It starts with keeping the Sabbath, remember? Keeping your appointment. Isaiah 58. Let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him for the marriage of the Lamb. Give honor to Yahweh. Give honor to Yahweh. Let us rejoice and give honor to Yahweh. Again, I say this is not just a voice that speaks these few words. This is a teaching program that takes place here. And the bride has made themselves ready. That's speaking of you. You, right here. The bride has made themselves ready. Well, the bride is the one that's teaching this right here. And these people that is not part of this first original house, they will have a place, yes, as sons and daughters, but the rank, you're going to be first in rank, if I can get this over, first in rank. They left their first estate. That doesn't mean that this position was given to them first. It means this rank was the first, the highest there is. And that's what Yahweh shows for you who endure these tests and learn and progress under the trials, temptations, and tribulations, and have stood strong for Yahweh. Then that's speaking of you. You're going to be placed in the first, the highest position. Now this, brethren, is where Yahweh's sons were placed. They left their first estate. That first meant the highest position. They held the highest position in the universe, and they left it. Right now, you're holding, by prophecy, that position, that highest position in the universe. You, the first, who are the last, but you will be the first. That should be clear. You'll be the first in rank. We'll be working with Yahweh and Yahshua. This is never going to end. Throughout all eternity, we will multiply. We will train our children the way we're training them now. But our children are going to hold high-ranking positions in this right? This era that we're going into. They will hold high-ranking positions. They will receive their subconscious mind. And those children will be, right when this takes place, their subconscious mind is probably much greater than the first sons of Yahweh. And the first sons of Yahweh was extremely intelligent. But these will be greater, and the mind that Yahweh has that's going to give you this high ranking, the first rank under Yahweh. Yahweh is always going to be first, but you're going to be coming off of Yahweh with that first position. Yahweh and Yahshua. Us and our children, it says. Us and our children. And our offspring. Okay, verse 8 now. And to them was granted that they should be arrayed in fine linen and clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the saints. And he said to me, Write, blessed are those, speaking of you now, who are called unto this marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These are true sayings of Yahweh. I'm thinking that should magnify everything that's been brought before now, and you should be able to get a picture of this, what Yahweh has called you to. These positions are easily thrown away. Don't take them lightly. I've told you what they are. Yahweh tells you what they are. That's everything that I've brought to you is in the Scriptures. That's not going to fail, he says. It's going to take place. Only you could be the one to choose to throw it away by not doing what you're told to do. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the service back to the next leader. I love you.